So what is the best DPS class in Mist of Pandaria? Well, this is a difficult question to answer because it all depends if it's going to be in the beginning or at the end of this expansion. Therefore, I've made two different categories, the best DPS in Phase 1 and the best DPS at the end of Mist of Pandaria. I've placed all the healers and tanks at the bottom, basically because they're not a DPS class. But one of the best DPS in the beginning is going to be Survival. When you're going to enter the first raid with pre-raid base gear, you will be dominating, and as you're getting your best in slot gear, you will become even better. What about Marksman? Well, it's not really performing as great, but I can't place it at the bottom because here is another specialization, Beast Mastery. BM Hunters are not performing good at all in Phase 1, so this is not really a specialization you should be playing. What about Rogues? Well, Assassination are not really performing that well, which is why I'm placing it together with the BM Hunter. Combat Rogues are doing a bit better, but I can't place this at A, instead it's gonna be together with the MM Hunter. Good news though, some Rogues are actually performing pretty decent. Some would probably say it could be at S tier, but I gotta place it right below the Survival Hunter, as I feel like Hunters are just doing a lot more damage. Shadow Priests are actually struggling quite a bit in the beginning because they're lacking haste, mastery and crit, and these stats are important for the specialization to also perform well. Next up, the Shaman. Elemental can on some fights also compete with sub-rogues, but overall they're not performing as great, which is why I'm placing them below. However, Enhancement are doing a lot better damage, or well, at least a higher amount of damage compared to Elemental. On some fights, they could even compete together with the Hunter, so some would probably say it could be at S tier, but I'm gonna place it at A. Next up, the Mage, with 3 different specializations, Frost, Arcane and Fire. Frost are dominating in the beginning, because you don't really need a lot of stats to pull out some decent damage. This is not the same case as a Fire Mage, as you really need a lot of crit, but also haste and mastery to pull some decent damage. And this is why on some fights I would place it in tier B, but overall actually at the bottom together with the Shadow Priest. Arcane also deserves a spot at the bottom, as it's not performing well either. What about Warriors? Well, you might have been used to play Fury in Cataclysm. This is no longer the case, as in Phase 1 you can actually perform really well as arms. Yeah, actually being one of the best damage dealers the moment you get some decent gear. So this is a fun specialization to try, also if you like to PvP as a warrior. At the top you will also find Destruction Warlocks, performing absolutely insane on single target fights, but also pretty well when it comes to AoE. This is sadly not the same case as the Demo Warlock, and I gotta be honest, it is actually pretty frustrating to play this in the beginning. This is also the same case with Affliction, but they are performing a bit better compared to Demo. But sadly not good enough to be placed in tier B, at least in my opinion. What will make it into this category is going to be the Windwalker instead. A quick spoiler, Windwalker will most likely stay in this category for the remaining time of Mist of Pandaria, as you will never really see them at the bottom, but neither at the top. Feral Druids will start to pick up the moment they get a bit of epic gear, and also enough hit, expertise, crit and mastery, but sadly not good enough to be outperforming an Enhancement or Sub-Rogue, at least not for many fights. But they are performing better than most classes in tier B, but I can't sadly place them in A yet. Boomkin Druids are also not performing very well yet, as they're also lagging a lot of stats to do some decent AoE damage or single target wise. Fairy Warriors are also extremely bad. Yeah, I gotta place them at the bottom as well, together with Retro Paladins. On some fights, Paladins can in some cases make it into tier B, but overall they're going to be at the bottom. What will however be at the top is going to be the Unholy Death Knight. Frost Death Knights are also doing really good, but not as good as Unholy, which is why they're placed together with Enhancement and Sub-Rogue. But don't worry, it's not like your favorite spec will stay at the bottom forever, at least not for many classes. I've for example found some old data from original Mist of Pandaria showing top 100 passes as the different specializations in Siege of Orgrimmar 25-man heroic, so the last raid in this expansion. Do remember this is old data, and people are min-maxing a lot more this time around, so some specializations might end up performing a lot better compared to what they did back then. Alright, so time for me to categorize the different DPS on how they'll most likely end up performing in the last couple of phases. Demo Warlock are still going to be at the bottom, especially when we consider the damage, Affliction and Destruction will be pulling. Affliction has moved to S tier as they're absolutely insane for single target but also multi-dotting and AoE damage. And many fights in the last raid also has many different ads you will need to take care of, which is why this spec is also outperforming Destro. What about the Shaman? Well, Enhancement used to be some of the best damage dealers in Phase 1, where now they've actually been overtaken by many other specializations. Therefore, it doesn't really matter what you play at the end of the expansion, as Enhancement and Elemental are pretty close to each other when it comes to damage output. Sadly, Retribution Paladins are not really performing that well in the entire expansion, but it has moved up and now competing with the Shaman as well. What about Hunters? Well, you might remember BM being at the bottom. This is no longer the case. This specialization are actually performing so well, not top, but close to the Warlock. And Survival used to be the best damage dealer in Phase 1, or well, at least for the Hunter class, and this has moved down and now being overtaken by the BM Hunter. Marksman sadly isn't really doing great and is still at the bottom. Combat Rogue seems not to perform that well, which is why I'm placing it at the bottom. However, Assassination has catched up and in my opinion has to be together with the Affliction Warlock. Some would probably argue it to be placed at A tier. Sub Rogue used to perform so well in Phase 1, but this has been reduced by a high amount. However, it is usually outperforming combat, so it could definitely deserve a spot in B tier. Another class that has also moved down the ladder is the Arms Warrior. This used to be close to the top, but now it's more close to the bottom, at least for many fights, and this is also because of the other warrior specialization Fury, which used to be at the bottom in Phase 1, but has moved up the ladders, and I would now say being either in A or S tier. The reason why I placed them at S tier is because they're competing with another melee class, the Assassination Rogue. What about the Mage? Well, Fire are doing a lot better at the end of Mist of Pandaria. This is sadly not the same case for Frost Mages. They used to be at the S tier in Phase 1, but they've moved down and is now below Fire Mages. Instead, you'll most likely see Arcane now being at the top when you compare it to Frost and Fire. In my opinion, Shadow Priests are not really performing that well throughout the entire expansion, because I never really see them within top 5 of the damage meters when we're doing 25-man heroic kills. Maybe it's just me, but this is why I'm also placing it in B tier. How about the Windwalker Monk? Well, you will never see it at the top or at the bottom of the damage meter throughout the entire game. This is why I'm also placing it in B tier, because it's always doing average, never the best or the worst, no matter the phase and the fight. This is not the same case for Frost and Unholy Death Knights. Both of these has moved down the ladders and I usually never really see them perform any good. Maybe it's just me. But Feral and Balance used to be at the bottom, where you now find Frost and Unholy Death Knights. These has moved up the ladders and performing so much better when they get more crit, haste and mastery. Do remember, this is my tier list and how I've seen them perform in different rates. Maybe you have seen classes do a lot better, or well, specializations, and you would make this tier list completely different. If so, then let me know what should be in the S tier and what should be at the bottom. If you're interested in more Mist of Pandaria videos, then I will soon be releasing a lot more, so make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified when I post these videos and guides. As always, thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day. Peace.